right? Whether it's an adult or a child, but the child, they get just so excited to learn something new, and you can really like see their expression on their face. And yeah, so I think that's what excites me. But also, when it comes to specifically personal finance, I think it's just life changing, right? So, what's really important for me is just educating kids at such a young age, because it can really change the trajectory of their life once they have certain habits and it becomes part of their lifestyle.
Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting show of the About That Water podcast. I have the honor of bringing on a wonderful person who is all about the numbers. And some people call her, she runs the numbers. And her name is Crystina Cardozo. And she is going to provide some great insight about real estate and also a little bit about teaching the kids. And that's very important, especially for you who are out there who are the actual teachers and educators, but you also are a parent first. So by you being a parent, I think this will be an awesome episode for you. So let's dive on in. How you doing today, Christina?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming through. So let's go on and dive right into it. What is it about teaching kids that excite you?
Yeah, so I've been in the education field since I graduated college in 2011, and I, I just I think it's one of the most rewarding jobs that you could possibly have when you see the growth of someone, right? Whether it's an adult or a child, but the child, they get just so excited to learn something new, and you can really like see their expression on their face. And yeah, so I think that's what excites me. But also, when it comes to specifically personal finance, I think it's just life changing, right? So, what's really important for me is just educating kids at such a young age, because it can really change the trajectory of their life once they have certain habits and it becomes part of their lifestyle.
Yeah. So you mentioned habits. That's kind of what this show is all about. What type of habits are you drilling into these kids?
Yeah, so something as simple as like even budgeting, right? So when you think about budgeting, it might be easy to tell someone you need to create a budget. But if nobody has actually done that as a child or, a teenager or a young adult, it's actually really hard for them. And I remember even myself sometimes, or even today, sometimes I struggle to say, do I still like this method of budgeting? Do I want to try it out? Do I want to try an app? Do I want to go back to Excel sheet? Do I want to? And so like all that comes because you've practiced with it, right? And you create a habit out of it, like coming up with a schedule. I put an alarm on my phone. I'm going to do it this often. And so it's really important to start that as soon as possible, because it becomes this lifestyle, and it's only going to be easier for you when you're an adult and you have to worry about budgeting bigger items.
What are the big hurdles of getting somebody out of an old habit into a new one?
Yeah, I think you really just have to test certain things. So I remember as a child, I was budgeting with a notebook, like paper and pencil, right? And so actually, that's how I was able to save for my first car. By the age of 16, I had $7,000 already saved, right? And I had been planning this out for years, because as soon as I hit 14, I was able to work, right? And so I have this habit, but then, technology comes around, technology changes. So you want to test some things out. And also, I wouldn't really suggest paper and pencil, because that's a way to make a lot of mistakes.
Mhm.
The more money you have coming in, more money you have coming out. So you do have to like play around with it, but you have to give yourself time. Don't just say like, oh, I'm just going to try this one method, see if I like it, see if it sticks. And then the next week or 2 weeks goes by and you kind of given up on it, right? You really have to tell yourself, no, let me give it at least a month or so, maybe 6 weeks, to keep at it on a weekly basis. And then you'll notice that it becomes habit and it just gets easier with time. But I mean, a great thing is like if you set things up on automation, right? Like if you have your alarm clock and you say every Sunday night at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., I'm going to budget whatever that may be, things become easier when you kind of try to automate your finances that way.
So, like, who got you started? Who planted that seed that say, like, you need a budget?
So my mom, and I give her so much props of who I am today. And that's actually a big reason why I do educate my kids because I noticed that it has been just part of my lifestyle since I was a kid. And it just has made it so much easier. And then I remember being like 18 or 19 years old and me talking to some friends and asking them, like, oh, you don't budget? And they're looking at me like I'm the crazy one. And I'm looking at them like, you really don't budget? Because it was just part of my lifestyle. But it's because my mom had kind of created this habit since I was younger where I would have an allowance, I would have three different envelopes, one for spending, one for saving, one for giving, right? And so I got used to that and it just kind of set me up for my future. And so I'm, proof that when you start at such a young age, it just becomes so easy to transition into adulthood. And I didn't struggle financially in terms of like saving and budgeting because of that.
See, now you're getting into the debate that I always have. And I like to ask this question, which is it best to teach the parents or is it best to teach the child about finances?
Yeah, so I'm actually really big on teaching them both at the same time. And I think parents have to be vulnerable enough to be able to learn with their kids. And I know it's not always easy because I offer a course, it's called a Parent and Me course. And some parents have come to me and they said, "Yeah, but I don't feel comfortable taking this course if I'm learning for the first time with my child. I'd rather learn by myself and then go teach the kid." And I'm like, "No, like it's okay for you to learn with your kid, right? It's okay for you to show them your vulnerability and to show that you're also always learning too, because that's a trait that you want your child to have."
Yeah, because I'm not sure if you know, but we did talk about it offline. But I was also an educator as well, and one of the things that I've noticed is that kids are like empathetic from the beginning. Like they don't know who you are, but they're willing to assist and help. And I think that's one of the things that people don't allow their children to actually express themselves. And having that vulnerability is really key, I think, in the family dynamic.
I agree. I think showing them that you're always learning, explaining what your mistakes are. I mean, if you think about like how many less mistakes we would have done if we knew all of our parents' mistakes, right? Or our aunts and uncles' mistakes, right? Then I wouldn't have done the same thing because you had already told me about it. But so many times, us as adults, we might be ashamed of the money mistakes that we made. And so we don't share it with other people. And then, really you're hurting those other people, especially when it comes to your kids. I can think about so many examples of credit, right? Sometimes we make bad mistakes and it affects our credit, right? Well, if you go tell your kids that, or you tell young people that, it's going to be so beneficial for them. Like that could save them years off of like struggling with credit and debt and having all of those issues just because they learned from you.
That is so true. Because that brings us up to the second segment, which is talking about, how did you actually overcome some adversities to get you where you are today?
Yeah. So I would say because I'm a teacher, it's always, and because I live in New Jersey, it's always been, as much as I say, like I budget and so forth, but sometimes depending on where you are, you might have to do like added things, right? And so I always like had a second job. Um, and I enjoyed what I was doing on the side, like if it was tutoring, and that's common for teachers too, right? But there was a point where I was actually running a tutoring center and I was making a good amount of money, like on the side, besides my full time job. And then I kind of got trapped in this like lifestyle creep, right? Like when you make more money, you're like, oh, then I can spend a little bit more. I can get some things on Amazon or whatever. And then by the end of the year, I'm like, wow, I spent this amount of money, So I feel like that was a struggle that I kind of overcame. And I, know about finances. And I'm sharing that because even the people who are educated in that space, we can fall into certain traps. Um, but you learn from it. And that's when it's really important for you to stick to your budget. And now I realize, wow, like what did I do with that money? I have no idea. It wasn't anything meaningful. And so you start to reflect and you think, wow, I'm now more financially whole. And so I know like what to do. And I think about my future goals. And so I'm not going to fall down that trap because I have more of a plan. So I think it's easier when you have a plan, like in the next 5 years, where do you see your life? In the next year, where do you see your life? And then you kind of work backwards to make sure like you're on track for that.
Yeah, because a lot of us, we always have plans. And how do we actually kind of keep ourselves on track to kind of separate ourselves from the rest? Do you have any suggestions or?
Yeah. So I think about me specifically, I think about having a goal. So I'm also a real estate investor and I do want to leave the education field in terms of like going to school. I still, education is a passion of mine. It's in my heart. And so I still want to educate people, but I don't necessarily want to be in the school system anymore or not too much longer. So I think about, wow, I can really see the power of real estate. What's my goal? Like how much do I need to get in terms of cash flow in order for me to leave my job, right? And then I also need to make sure I have enough reserves in that business for me to leave my job. So once I set that goal, once I figure out what that amount is and I think about how many properties I need to have and then I have a goal, then you're on track. There's great templates, to say like if in 12 months I want to do this, then what am I doing every quarter to get to that point? So I'm really big on goal setting in that way, and that helps me keep accountability. Also, joining certain groups, having certain friends in this industry, those are all helpful as well.
Yeah, because the real estate realm, like everybody all of a sudden is a realtor or investor. And it's interesting that you're actually taking this route because I've noticed that a lot of educators do wind up taking the real estate route because it's almost like teaching. You still got to set your plan, you still got to figure out who's going to be here. In the education piece was you as a front runner learning everything. So, what do you remember your first property?
Yeah, so my first property we bought about 11 years ago and we house hacked. So that's always something that I encourage any friends if they're like, what should I do to get started? House hack. It's my number one suggestion. And I mean, at that point, 11 years ago, it was a lot easier to find certain deals. I won't, they're still out there, but it's harder to find, maybe not as much cash flow. But I mean, we pretty much live mortgage free by house hacking. And that was able to kind of set us up and also give me the awareness of how real estate actually works. And not too long after that, I had my first son and I was able to stay home with him for 2 years. So I got that taste of freedom, that independence, right? We talk about financial independence a little bit. And so I kind of had um, just a slice of that because I was able to enjoy life with my son for 2 years and before I went back into the school system.
Now, that is cool. So, for those of you who are not familiar with house hacking, there are multiple ways to go about it. And can you explain a little bit about house hacking and what methods of house hacking did you use?
Yeah, so house hacking is essentially when your house can generate some income, right? And so what we did, and you can get a single family, you can get a duplex, you can get, even a larger property, a fourplex, and essentially you're living in one part and you're renting out the other side to generate some type of income. Now, us specifically, we had bought a single family home with a walkout basement. So the walkout basement, we actually had redone it. So it was already set up to rent out, but it was set up to rent out like by the room. So it had four separate rooms. At the time, we didn't want to rent to four different people. So we just rather rent to a couple or, young family, small family. And so we actually knocked out one of the bedrooms and created a living room because it didn't even have a living room. So we gutted everything. We created this really nice 3 bedroom apartment downstairs. It had a kitchen, had a bathroom. We did all of that. And actually, like we had so much interest in it. I felt like a realtor at the time. Like I just had like a long line of people waiting to see the place. It was amazing. And yeah, that was able to take care of our mortgage. But there are other ways if you want to rent out a space. And even if you don't want to rent out inside, there's like apps for you to like rent out your garage or your driveway, so you can still make money from your house, even though you don't want to have somebody come stay inside your house to generate income.
That is awesome. I do like that method of actually taking advantage of the extra space that you're not going to use. So, um,
Yeah.
because I recently got myself a duplex, and so right now nobody's in either part, so all the mortgage is all on me. But so my struggle right now is trying to figure out how to get the conversation started to kind of put it up for the market and start getting people to just come by and say like, oh yeah, I would like to actually live here. How is that process?
Yeah, so at that time, we still used Facebook, and that's a great lead to be able to market for free. Also, you can list on Zillow for rent. Those would be like the biggest platforms that I would use.
Okay, I'll definitely take a look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So let's go on and mosey on over to the third segment, which is the features. What skills or habits that you feel that will take you to the next level?
Yeah, I think by and I think this comes because I'm an educator and I'm used to always doing research and growing as an educator. Like you would know, we still have to have a certain amount of professional development hours every year. So we are required, and my position, so I'm called teacher, but my position is actually a math coach. So I don't have my own classroom. I coach and make sure teachers are doing what they need to be doing in the math classroom. But I started off my education field teaching high school and college level math. And so, anyways, I say that because I'm very much into like reading a lot of books on education today, right? Education has been transitioning over a period of time. So you want to make sure that you're always educating yourself. And so I think that's a great trait to have, is just have this growth mindset, and always listening to podcasts, always listening, always reading different books, talking to different people who know more than me. And I think that's the most important trait to have, and also kind of like having this mindset shift that you are capable of doing whatever you put your mind to, right? So, and sometimes it could be a struggle too, but I think when you have your plan, it does make it a lot easier for you to achieve those things.
Love it, love it, love it. Because that's one of the things. Like when you passionate about it, learning about it, it's a lot easier to do to get those credits and credits in a sense that yeah, you can go ahead on and do it, get a piece of paper to say you did this for most accredited certifications. But even for yourself, I think it's one of the things that we kind of blow past. We like even listening to this particular episode, like say you actually investing into your lifestyle or you just want to change your habits. This is one of those episodes like every time you listen, you get in point 0.5 or an hour of credits or ECUs. So you can actually add these to your credit sheet if you just want to say like, hey, I spent 50 hours learning about real estate or 20 hours learning about educating myself on the different habits and so forth. So thank you for
Yeah, that's a great
that.
point.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to leave everybody with before we dive into the final four questions?
No, I think I pretty much mentioned like just, have that growth mindset, come up with your plan, be open to always learning. Those are the key traits.
Awesome, awesome. All right, you ready for the final four?
I'm ready.
All right, so number one, what does wealth mean to you?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people get confused thinking that wealth is maybe having a lot of money, right? But I also think about really just being happy in your space, like happy with what you're doing. So it doesn't mean like you're able to retire early. That could be part of your wealth, but it could also just be like content in what you're doing. So being happy to go to a job that you want to go at, like having some type of purpose behind it. And then also having yourself set up, right? Being financially literate is also part of being wealthy. And just having this plan ahead of time that, I will be able to retire with this amount of money. I'm not going to be struggling. I think a lot of when it comes to like struggling financially, a lot of people get stressed with that. And so I think when you're really trying to build this wealth, it's because you're trying to get away from that. You want to be content with your life. You want to be happy. You don't want that stress, and you want to like pass it on to other people. And yeah, so I think that's it.
Because you mentioned something, and this is not part of the final four, but what are you running away from?
um, I guess I just want to be more in control of my future plans, right? So I have a vision in mind, like this is how I want my life to be like. And so I guess not really that I'm running away, but I'm really just running towards that. Like you think about having your dream life. What does your dream life look like? And what are the steps that you're doing to get to that point?
I love it. You're the first one that actually says you're not running away from, you're running towards. That is amazing. I like that. Number two, what was your worst money mistake?
Yeah, so I mentioned that earlier. I think it was falling into that lifestyle creep. And so, and it's easy to happen when you are making more money. And then sometimes we think, like, oh, well, I'm making this amount of money. I deserve this, right? Like, I'm making good money. I spend so many hours at work. I deserve to have this time. I deserve to go on this vacation. And so, yeah, but you still have to live within your means, right? And so, and you have to have this plan and you still have to save and so forth. So I think sometimes getting stuck in that phase can be detrimental later. And that's what I felt.
Number three, what is your favorite financial or non-financial book?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for sure.
Hands down.
Mic drop. I think that book actually opened up my mind a lot. Just to, I don't know, just like to just a different worlds, right? Where you're not stuck in the rat race. I wish I would have read that book even younger. And it's funny because I suggested, or I think I gave the book to my sister. So there's a big age gap between me and my brother and sister. But I gave it to her like for her 18th birthday. I'm like, you need to read this. It was life changing for me. And I read it, maybe I was 30 at the time. So if there's anyone who hasn't read it, or if you want to gift a book to a younger person in your life, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the book that I would suggest.
All right. Number four, what is your favorite dish to make?
Oh man. I would say something pasta related, even though it's not something that I often make. So I'm often making like rice and beans like on a regular basis. But I do like to like have some type of pasta dish, maybe like penne alla bacca. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but yeah, that's my dish.
We ain't gonna judge you on that. So, awesome. I would love if you have a photo of it. Please share it through. Love to show the audience. So
sounds good.
Awesome. All right, this is the very last question of the show, which is where could we find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me on IG. My handle is She Runs the Numbers. So I'm a math educator. That's why I kind of that just stuck with me. So I actually have a bachelor's degree in mathematics, a master's in math education. I'm like this big numbers geek. My mom's a CPA, so I blame it on her. And I also talk about not only like real estate, but also personal finance, financial literacy for kids, topics like that on IG. You can send me a message, connect with me there.
Awesome. So everybody, please make sure that you take time and go ahead on and lock in this episode, because this episode is very, very filled with information and details, and also especially about the habits for you and your kids to replicate. Now, Christina has been doing an amazing job and amazing work. So make sure you guys follow her on those platforms. Give her a good, throw some hearts out there, random photos, whatever. Just say like, hey, I just heard you on About That Water podcast, and it's amazing. So that's all I want to put you out there.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Y'all be safe. I'm out.